Well, look, we touched on the story a smidge in the last episode. Uh, well, maybe not full on touch, maybe more of a grope, perhaps a fondle. But traditional turn-based
I was
JRPGs,
always a fan of Diddle myself.
traditional turn-based JRPGs have seemingly become the new cause célèbre in the gaming industry of the past 3 months or so, with the Nihongophilic love-in really sort of hitting a fever pitch in the last several weeks. In the past week alone, Namco, Natsume, Square Enix, and Kemco all announced the development of classic-style JRPGs, with some even releasing as early as this very summer, within a matter of weeks. As a massive fan of series like Chrono Trigger, Breath of Fire, Phantasy Star, and Super Mario RPG, I share the public's optimism on this one, with Squeenix and others eagerly giving a reach around to the Western market in the last 14 years. There's no question a return to the fundamentals is in the offing. Take fucking notes, GameStop. But let's not forget the reason JRPGs went away in the first fucking place, shall we, folks? Prior to the year 2008, the standard turn-based JRPG formula went from the cool guy everyone wanted to hang out with to the sweaty encyclopedia salesman we all mistakenly let into the fucking foyer and no one could manage to pry him off the fucking coffee table. JRPGs are stringent sons of bitches, for one thing. I mean, choice? What the fuck is that? Here's our story with our characters and our settings, and if you upgrade our protagonist, he can use upgraded variants of our fucking moves. I mean, for something entitled a role-playing game, for all the stats, armor upgrades, and tropes of high fantasy, there's very little actual playing of a role in traditional JRPGs. And mind you, this touches on a much deeper debate, one I think I should probably touch on in greater detail in my own show, or perhaps only fondle. But as I've said before, role-playing begins and ends with Dungeons and Dragons. It's where literally every video game RPG descends. What Western RPG developers used to understand was that in order to play a role, the player first needs to create that role. That's what character sheets in D&D and Vampire the Masquerade are for. Likewise, in Western RPGs from Dragon Age to Elder Scrolls, literally the first order of business is to do just that. Hell, even Japanese developers have begun to grudgingly acknowledge this fact with games like Dragon's Dogma and the Souls series. I mean, you can lament the rise to prominence of games like Skyrim and Mass Effect all you like, but their resounding success and emphasis on player choice was actually beginning to get through the thick, arrogant skulls of developers at Square Enix and cause them to actively enhance player agency. What worries me is that with the return of the classic JRPG, which in my eyes has more in common with turn-based strategy games and interactive novels than actual RPGs, is that we may have unwittingly de-incentivized the Japanese video game industry from ever considering a genuine role-playing experience in their fucking games. If you don't think it could happen, turn your eyes to the PS2's library, if you will. I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The PlayStation 2 has the single most overrated video game library in the history of this industry. And one of the largest factors to that condition is all the interchangeable, cynically exploitative JRPG dreck that was cranked out on that fucking console as embodied by mindless moe bullshit like Magna Carta. I mean, enjoy your JRPGs if you must, but never forget what killed them in the first fucking place. I mean, not to have a Brett screwed Brett moment here, but JRPGs did it to them fucking selves. In the PS1 and PS2 era, they were slapping together any haphazard conglomeration of anime stereotypes, bracketing their terribly localized interactions with cutscenes that have aged about as well as Jack Nicholson's jowls and populated the pastel proceedings with characters whose ever-increasing neuroses was surpassed only by their ever-diminishing amount of fucking asymmetrical clothing. This was a gravy train, folks, and Japan got greedy and wrote it right into the poorhouse. That's what killed the JRPG. Not Western developers, not the Xbox, not the Japanese economic depression, not the lone gunman on the grassy knoll. People like Yosuke Matsuda killed JRPGs, and now they want to bring them back. I'm Razorfist. God fucking speed.